Peru's Congress decided to remove President Martín Vizcarra from office because of a new corruption scandal. Brazil suspended the Chinese vaccine trials against COVID-19 due to a serious incident. Armenia, Russia, and Azerbaijan signed a deal putting an end to weeks of fierce clashes over Nagorno-Karabakh. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada from the TeleSUR headquarters in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Peru's Congress decided to remove President Martín Vizcarra from office because of a new corruption scandal. The motion against Vizcarra is based on alleged bribes that he received when he was a regional governor. The South American nation has been thrust into yet another chapter of political uncertainty, while also grappling with a severe economic downturn at the world's highest per capita COVID-19 mortality rate. The new call for Vizcarra's removal centers around accusations that he took over $630,000 in bribes in exchange for authorizing 2 construction contracts while being governor of Moquegua. Vizcarra pointed out that he will not have had the authority to usurp through the contracts in question, which must go through a detailed approval process involving multiple actors. One of the contracts was set for an irrigation project and the other for a region-wide hospital.
105 congressmen have voted in favor, 19 against, 4 abstentions. The resolution that declares the vacancy of the presidency of the Republic for the reason provided in the second paragraph of Article 113 of the Political Constitution of Peru has been approved.
And Brazil suspended the Chinese vaccine trials against COVID-19 due to a serious incident. This was announced by the Brazilian regulatory body. Only yesterday, the governor of Sao Paulo, João Doria, announced that the first 120,000 doses of the vaccine against COVID-19 produced by the Chinese Sinovac, one of the most promising so far, will be distributed in Brazil by next November 20. On the nature of the incident, which involved a voluntary recipient, no details were provided except that it will have occurred on 29 October. Bolivia's President Luis Arce swore in a new cabinet of ministers on Monday, who will work together to address the social and political challenges generated by the de facto government. The ceremony that took place in La Casa Grande del Pueblo in La Paz City after Luis Arce swearing in to the presidency. He swore in 16 ministers who will be part of his government team. Among the officials, we can mention Rogelio Maita, who took office as Foreign Affairs Minister, Edgar Pozo as Health Minister, Edmundo Novillo as Defense Minister, and Marcelo Alejandro Montenegro as Economy Minister. The president used this opportunity to guarantee the economic reconstruction of the Indian country, which was affected after the de facto government's measures in the midst of the health crisis because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Bolivia has several challenges today, several challenges that have been emerging over the past 11 months. We had to form a cabinet that is up to those challenges, not only the challenge of economic recovery, but for all that we are being informed in these few hours during our stay at Casa Grande del Pueblo. The economic situation of the country is seriously wounded.
Venezuela's General Attorney offered a balance of the meeting held with the Attorney General of the International Criminal Court, where the violation of the human rights of the Venezuelan people by the United States was evaluated.
In this case, the serious violation of human rights suffered by the Venezuelan people are being studied as a consequence of the sanctions against our country, which, as it is known, have affected the right to health, including the right to food, and as a consequence of both violations, have also affected the right to life.
Then, Tarek William Saab said that he will send information to the International Criminal Court that will detract from the public prosecutor's office work in defense of human rights.
We emphasize that in this stage of preliminary analysis there is a constructive collaboration between the offices of both prosecutors in order to provide sufficient information on the actions of the Venezuelan justice system. And this is what we did in part on Wednesday, November 4, and that in the next few days we will also deliver to the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court information that reveals, in this case, that the Venezuelan state punishes and pursues those who violate human rights.
The Venezuelan Attorney General also affirmed that he possessed data that computes and proves the investigations carried out by the Public Prosecutor's Office on human rights violation in the country.
In the event that the prosecutor concludes that such or such crimes are within her jurisdiction, we will be able to demonstrate in a convincing manner that in our country the acts of violence and the violation of human rights have been investigated, and to the extent that those responsible have been able to be identified, they have been punished with the full force of the law.
Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza led on Monday the recovery of the Venezuelan embassy in La Paz, Bolivia, after the usurpation by the envoys of opposition leader Juan Guaidó with the collaboration of the Bolivian de facto government. After the change of leadership the day before with the inauguration of Bolivian President Luis Arce, this act establishes that the Bolivian authorities recognizes the government of Nicolás Maduro Moros as a legitimate and sole authority in Venezuela. According to a video shared by Arreaza himself, representatives of diverse social movements and political parties accompanied the retaking of Caracas' diplomatic legation in La Paz. All of this was, according to the Chancellor, in support and solidarity with the Venezuelan people. And we'll go now to a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Thousands of people filled the Black Lives Matter Plaza in front of the White House to celebrate after Democrat Joe Biden was declared the projected winner of the U.S. presidential election. In spontaneous outbursts after news broke the Democrats' win following nearly 4 hours nail-biting days of vote counting, they gathered outside the White House singing "Goodbye" to Trump, celebrated outside Trump Towers in the president's native and very democratic New York, and dancing in the streets across the country in Los Angeles. And the U.S. President Donald Trump fired Defense Secretary Mark Esper on Monday. According to the president's inner circle intimates, the measure was expected even before the virtual victory of Joe Biden in the presidential elections was known. In the order of dismissal that was spread through a message in Twitter by the U.S. president, it was also announced that the person who will replace Esper in the Pentagon will be the director of the National Center of Anti-Terrorism, Christopher Miller. This happens after local media in the country revealed that Trump and Esper may have had differences after the national protest for racial justice about 2 weeks ago. The top Republican in the U.S. Congress said that President Donald Trump was fully entitled to challenge election results in multiple states, insisting that such scrutiny will not undermine democracy.
Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options. Obviously, no states have yet certified their election results. We have at least 1 or 2 states that are already on track for a recount. And I believe the president may have legal challenges underway in at least 5 states. The core principle here is not complicated. In the United States of America, all legal ballots must be counted. Any illegal ballots must not be counted. The process should be transparent or observable by all sides, and the courts are here to work through concerns.
The virtual president of the United States, Joe Biden, appointed an advisory board to control the COVID-19 pandemic. Joe Biden made the appointment amidst President Donald Trump's challenge to the electoral process. The advisory board will be in charge of managing strategies to fight the coronavirus pandemic in the country. Likewise, the Democrats also praised the news related to the progress of the vaccine that is being developed in the United States against the virus. The United States is the country most affected by the COVID-19 with over 237 fatalities. Fresh protests were held Monday in Tbilisi as thousands of people took to the streets the day after police cracked down on demonstrations against Georgia's recent general elections. Some 8,000 protesters gathered outside Georgian parliament in a response to a call by opposition parties that refused to enter the new parliament, raising fears of another political crisis in the restless Caucasus nation. The ruling party, which is led by billionaire ex-Prime Minister Bidzina Ivashvili, flatly denies accusations of electoral fraud.
The political opposition is unified as ever under one question, that elections were falsified and we are not going to recognize it, and we are not going to enter the parliament and work in this false parliament.
We will be standing here peacefully and will protest against stolen elections until a new snap election is held under the new administration of the Central Election Commission.
The hospital admissions have been dropping across Belgium, according to Interfederal COVID-19 spokesperson Steven van Gach. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo told on Sunday that it was too early to tell whether the second wave of COVID-19 has already peaked. At the end of October, Verviers Hospital built an auxiliary unit dedicated to receiving COVID-19 patients on the hospital in the car park. With 34 beds, it allows the hospital to increase its capacity as it faces the second wave of the pandemic. The country is one of the most affected countries in the world by the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic, with 578 COVID-19 cases, according to Public Health Institute Cienzano on Monday. And we have more stories coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev signed a statement on ending the war in Nagorno-Karabakh. The Russian president announced that the internally displaced persons and refugees will return to the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh and adjacent areas under the control of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. The decision was made hours after the Azerbaijani military took control of a town dominated by Armenia for 28 years and after a Russian plane was shot down.
Prisoners of war and other detained persons and bodies of the dead. All economic and transport links in the region are unblocked. Control over transport communications will be carried out by the bodies of the Border Guard Service of the FSB of Russia. We proceed from the premise that the agreements reached will create the necessary conditions for a long-term and full-scale settlement of the crisis around Nagorno-Karabakh on a just basis and in the interest of the Armenian and Azerbaijani peoples.
And the world continues to suffer the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, with a total of more than 50 million confirmed cases this weekend. The number of fatalities sums up to the figures of contagion, registering 1,260,000 people who died after contracting the new coronavirus, according to the data provided by the University of Johns Hopkins. The United States continues to be the country most affected by the pandemic, after surpassing this Monday the figure of 10 million cases of the infection with the virus and reaching 237,000 deaths. The US is followed by India with more than 8.5 million cases and more than 126,000 deaths, and Brazil with more than 5.6 million confirmed cases and more than 162,200 diseases from the COVID-19. A 17-day far-break lockdown has come to an end in Wales hospitals despite some of the highest regional infection rates in the UK, and calls for an extension of restrictions. On Monday, Wales' 17-day lockdown came to an end and a new set of national measures came into effect. The decision of not to extend the lockdown has come under considerable criticism because COVID rates in some parts of Wales are the highest in the country. The health portfolio representatives stress that people must respect social distancing as the new measures, which seems pubs, gyms, hairdressers and other non-essential business reopen, come into place. The loosening of restrictions also means people can travel around Wales, including moving from high-risk areas to low-risk areas. For its part, Switzerland deployed more than 2,500 military personnel to support testing operations and provide aid in the most affected areas by the pandemic, where hospitals are already overwhelmed. In the meantime, increasingly restrictive measures are sparking protests in Europe, especially in the labor sector. And the Lebanese Health Minister Hamad Hassan highlighted on Monday the necessity to impose a full lockdown amid the sharp rise of the number of coronavirus cases nationwide. Following a meeting for the Medical Scientific Committee at the Ministry of Public Health, the minister described the full lockdown as a chance to beef up the readiness of the healthcare sector. Partial lockdown did not yield the sort of results, he said. The head of healthcare also announced that after a series of contacts with the central bank, it had been decided to earmark center amounts for private hospitals to devote wards to coronavirus treatment. Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara invited his chief rival Henry Konan Bedi for talks to defuse a standoff over his contested election to a third term.
I would therefore like to invite my elder, President Henry Konan Bedi, President of the PDCI-RDA, to meet in the next few days for a frank and sincere dialogue in order to restore confidence.
And India reported more than 46,000 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. According to the Health and Family Welfare Ministry, the total number of COVID-19 cases surpasses 8.5 million. The nation reports a COVID-19 death toll of nearly 127,000. Despite increasing numbers of contagion and deaths, authorities decided to restore commercial activities. India also experiences an air pollution crisis. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.